The arrival of the Silent Ones, the Vorthak Empire had conquered 1,000 worlds without firing a single shot. They were known throughout the galaxy as the Silent Ones, masters of psychological warfare who broke civilizations through fear before any battle began. Their massive black ships would appear in orbit around unsuspecting planets, broadcasting nothing but their presence, letting terror do the work that weapons might otherwise accomplish. Commander Zektar stood on the bridge of the scout vessel, Shadow's Reach, his forearms clasped behind his elongated torso as he studied the blue and green planet floating in the view screen. Earth, the natives called it, a small world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star at the edge of the galaxy's spiral arm. His mission was simple reconnaissance, to determine if this primitive species posed any threat to the Empire's expansion into this sector. The initial scans had been amusing. Radio waves leaked into space, revealing a species barely capable of leaving their own atmosphere. Their most advanced spacecraft were chemical rockets that struggled to reach their single moon. They had divided themselves into competing nations that squabbled over resources and ideology. By every metric the Vorthak used to evaluate potential threats, Earth ranked somewhere between harmless and pathetic. Lieutenant Vormesh approached with a data tablet, her scales shifting to a purple hue that indicated mild interest. "Commander, we have completed our analysis of their military capabilities. They possess nuclear weapons, but only enough to destroy their own world. No directed energy weapons, no gravity manipulation, no faster-than-light technology. Their most powerful warships float on water and cannot even leave their planet's surface." Zektar made the grinding sound that passed for laughter among his species. Waterbound vessels trying to project power on a single planet. It was almost endearing how primitive they were. And their space defenses? A handful of satellites with basic sensors. Some appear to be weapons platforms, but they use kinetic projectiles or chemical explosives. Nothing that could penetrate even our scout ship's basic shields. Vormesh paused, her scales flickering to yellow. However, there is something odd about their orbital patterns. The commander turned his primary eyes toward his lieutenant while keeping his secondary pair focused on Earth. "Explain. Some of their satellites have been in orbit for decades, but their positioning seems deliberately calculated, as if they were placed to provide overlapping fields of coverage for the entire planet. It suggests more strategic thinking than we would expect from such a primitive species." Zektar dismissed the concern with a wave of his upper left arm. Every species developed basic strategic thinking eventually. It meant nothing. "Begin Phase 2. "Let them know we are here." The Shadow's Reach dropped its stealth field, revealing itself to Earth's sensors. The scout ship was small by Vorthak standards, merely 300 meters long, but its sleek black hull bristled with sensor arrays and communication equipment. This was the moment Zektar enjoyed most, when a primitive world realized they were not alone in the universe. The reaction from Earth was immediate and unexpected. Instead of the usual panic, confused communications, or desperate attempts at contact, the planet went silent. Every radio transmission ceased. Every satellite stopped broadcasting. For exactly 60 seconds, Earth was as quiet as the void around it. Then, with coordinated precision that made Vormesh's scales turn bright orange with alarm, something extraordinary happened. Thousands of previously hidden installations across Earth's surface came online simultaneously. Energy signatures that had been carefully masked for decades blazed to life. What the Vorthak had dismissed as normal background radiation revealed itself as a planet-wide network of advanced sensors and communication arrays. A single transmission came from Earth, aimed directly at the Shadow's Reach. The message was in perfect Vorthak battle language, a code that should have been impossible for humans to know. "Scout vessel of the Vorthak Empire, you have entered the sovereign space of Earth. State your intentions." Zektar's forearms went rigid with shock. No primitive species had ever responded to first contact in the Empire's own language. It was impossible. "Unless, Commander," Vormesh's voice carried genuine fear now, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures throughout their solar system. They were hidden behind some kind of interference we've never seen before. There are installations on their moon, on the fourth planet they call Mars, and throughout their asteroid belt." The view screen changed to show a tactical display of the solar system, and Zektar felt his heart stop. What had appeared to be a defenseless system was actually a fortress. Weapons platforms disguised as asteroids, military bases hidden beneath the surface of moons, an entire defense network that had been invisible to their sensors until the humans chose to reveal it. General Sarah Martinez stood in the command center buried beneath Cheyenne Mountain, watching as decades of preparation finally paid off. Earth had known this day would come ever since they had detected the first Vorthak transmission 80 years ago. A stray signal that the aliens never knew had reached this far. Humanity had spent those decades preparing, studying, and planning. "All Guardian stations report ready, General," her aide reported. "The Vorthak Scout is exactly where our models predicted it would be." Sarah allowed herself a thin smile. Let the aliens think Earth was primitive. Let them believe humans were divided and weak. Every war humanity had fought, every conflict that seemed to tear them apart, had actually been preparing them for this moment. Because humans had learned one truth from their bloody history. The best way to win a fight was to make your enemy underestimate you. "Open a channel to the Vorthak ship," Sarah ordered. When the connection was established, she spoke in their own language, words humanity had painstakingly decoded over decades of intercepted transmissions. "Commander Zektar of the Shadows Reach, I am General Martinez of Earth Defense Command. You have two options. Leave immediately and report to your empire that this system is under our protection, or remain and learn why humanity has survived every challenge the universe has thrown at us." On the bridge of his scout ship, Zektar struggled to process what was happening. The humans knew his name. They knew his ship's designation. They had been listening to Vorthak communications for decades without being detected. This was not a primitive species at all. This was a trap, and he had walked right into it. "Commander," Vormesh reported with growing panic, "I'm detecting launch signatures from Earth's surface. Hundreds of them. Whatever they're sending up, it's moving at velocities that shouldn't be possible with chemical rockets." The truth hit Zektar like a physical blow. The chemical rockets had been a deception. Everything Earth had shown to space was carefully crafted theater, designed to hide their true capabilities. The primitive radio signals, the divided nations, the struggling space program, all of it was camouflage. Sarah Martinez watched her tactical display as Earth's hidden arsenal revealed itself. Magnetic acceleration launchers, disguised as industrial facilities, hurled projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. Directed energy weapons, hidden in what appeared to be observatories, locked onto the Vorthak scout ship. Fighter craft launched from underground hangars that had been secret for 50 years, but the real surprise was yet to come. "Activate Project Longbow," Sarah commanded. In the asteroid belt, what appeared to be a mining operation underwent a terrifying transformation. The entire facility was actually humanity's first faster-than-light capable warship, the EDS Retribution. It had been built in secret over 40 years, disguised as a commercial venture. Now it powered up its experimental jump drive, preparing to demonstrate that humanity had reverse-engineered FTL technology from intercepted Vorthak transmissions. Zektar watched in horror as the human warship materialized directly behind his scout vessel, weapons locked and shields raised. It was impossible. No species developed such technology in isolation. But the evidence was undeniable. Humanity had been preparing for the Vorthak for almost a century, studying them, learning from them, and developing countermeasures. The commander realized with crystal clarity that the Vorthak Empire had made a terrible mistake. They had assumed Earth was just another primitive world to be conquered through fear. Instead, they had found a species that had turned paranoia into a survival strategy, that had united not in spite of their differences, but because of them, and that had spent generations preparing for this exact moment. "General Martinez," Zektar transmitted, trying to keep the fear from his voice, "I believe there has been a misunderstanding. The Vorthak Empire seeks only peaceful contact with Earth." Sarah's response carried the weight of humanity's entire history of conflict and survival. "Commander, we have monitored your empire's expansion for 8 decades. We know what you do to worlds that cannot defend themselves. Earth chooses a third option. We will not leave and we will not submit. Your empire will recognize our sovereignty, or you will learn why humanity is the apex predator of our world." The Shadow's reach found itself surrounded by hundreds of human vessels, each one representing technologies that should have been beyond Earth's grasp. Zektar understood that his next report to the Empire would change everything. The Silent Ones had finally encountered a species that had been listening to their silence, learning from it, and preparing to break it with a roar that would echo across the galaxy. The deception unveiled. The emergency session of the Vorthak Imperial Council convened in the crystal spires of their homeworld, Vorthana Prime. Commander Zektar's report had sent shockwaves through the Empire's leadership. For the first time in 3 millennia, a species had not only resisted their psychological warfare, but had turned it against them. Supreme Overseer Kralvek studied the holographic displays showing Earth's hidden defenses. His 6 eyes narrowed as he processed the implications. The humans had spent nearly a century preparing for an encounter with the Vorthak, studying intercepted transmissions, reverse engineering technology from theoretical principles, and most disturbingly, understanding Vorthak psychology well enough to craft a perfect deception. How many of our communications have they intercepted? Kralvek demanded. Intelligence Master Thoxnil's scales turned deep blue with embarrassment. Based on their demonstrated knowledge, we estimate they have been receiving and decoding our long-range transmissions for at least 80 Earth years. They know our fleet positions, our standard tactics, and our expansion patterns. They've been watching us while pretending to be blind. Back on Earth, General Sarah Martinez walked through the underground corridors of Strategic Command, her footsteps echoing off reinforced concrete walls. She entered a vast chamber where humanity's greatest secret stood revealed. Project Guardian was more than just a defense network. It was the culmination of humanity's entire industrial might, hidden beneath a carefully maintained facade of division and weakness. "Status report," she commanded as she entered the Tactical Operations Center. Colonel Chen Wei, her second in command, pulled up a holographic display of the solar system. All Guardian stations are operational. The Vorthak scout ship remains in position, likely transmitting everything back to their empire. We're maintaining the appearance of standard readiness while keeping our advanced assets hidden. Sarah nodded. Let them report back. Let them think they had seen Earth's full hand. The truth was far more complex. And Project Prometheus? Chen's expression grew serious. The 12 Prometheus-class warships are ready for deployment. The shipyards on Europa and Ganymede have been operating at full capacity. We can field a fleet of 300 vessels within 72 hours if needed. The scale of humanity's preparation was staggering. While the world above had continued with daily life, seemingly unaware of the alien threat, every major government had been secretly coordinating the greatest military buildup in human history. The public conflicts and disagreements were real, but they masked a deeper unity, born of species-wide survival instinct. Dr. James Harrison, Earth's leading xenopsychologist, entered the command center with urgent news. "General, we've completed our analysis of the Vorthak response patterns. They're going to send a show of force. Their entire doctrine depends on overwhelming psychological pressure. When that fails, they resort to displays of superior numbers." Sarah had expected this. The Vorthak had built their empire on fear, and Earth had just shown it could not be easily intimidated. "How long before their fleet arrives?" "Based on their standard deployment patterns, 6 to 8 weeks, Harrison replied. "They'll send enough ships to glass our planet 3 times over. It's their standard response to unexpected resistance." The general turned to address her command staff. "Then we proceed to Phase 3. Activate all deep space monitoring stations. I want to know the moment their fleet enters our outer system, and send the activation codes to Project Longbow. It's time to show them that humanity has been playing a longer game than they imagined." Across the solar system, installations that had been dormant for decades began to power up. On Mars, beneath the red sand dunes, massive underground factories started producing warships at a rate that would have seemed impossible to any observer. The Martian colonization program had been real, but it had also served as cover for humanity's largest military-industrial complex. Admiral Rebecca Thompson stood on the bridge of the EDS Retribution, humanity's first true warship. Hidden in the asteroid belt for 4 years, disguised as a mining operation, the kilometer-long vessel represented technologies that humanity had developed in absolute secrecy. The jump drive alone had taken 30 years to perfect, built from scientific principles gleaned from intercepted Vorthak transmissions and humanity's own theoretical physics. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving encrypted transmissions from Earth Command. The Vorthak are mobilizing their third fleet. Estimated strength, 40 capital ships, 200 escort vessels." Rebecca felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. Humanity had built 12 ships like the Retribution, but they would be facing 20 times their number. The plan didn't rely on matching the Vorthak ship for ship. It relied on something far more dangerous: human adaptability and the element of complete surprise. On Vorthana Prime, Supreme Overseer Kralvek made his decision. Deploy the Third Fleet to the Earth system. Commander Zektar's data shows they have perhaps 50 defensive vessels at most. Overwhelming force will break their spirit and demonstrate the futility of resistance. What the Vorthak didn't know was that their entire intelligence network had been compromised. Every spy satellite they had placed in nearby systems had been detected and fed false information. Every long-range scan had been carefully managed to show exactly what humanity wanted them to see. The Vorthak thought they were sending overwhelming force against a barely space-capable species. They were actually walking into a trap, 8 decades in the making. General Martinez stood before the Global Defense Council, representatives from every Earth nation appearing as holograms in the secure chamber. "Ladies and gentlemen, in approximately 6 weeks, the Vorthak Empire will arrive with a fleet they believe will easily overwhelm us. They expect to find a panicked world with hastily assembled defenses. Instead, they will find something else entirely." The President of the United States, Jiang Ming, spoke first. "Are we certain our deception will hold until they arrive?" "The Vorthak have a critical weakness," Sarah explained. "They've been dominant for so long that they've forgotten what it means to be hunted. They see what they expect to see. For 3,000 years, every species has reacted the same way to their arrival: fear, panic, and eventual submission. They have no framework for understanding what we've done." Prime Minister Adaura Okonkwo of the African Federation added her voice. "And our civilian population will continue to remain unaware until the moment of truth. The panic would serve no purpose and might reveal our preparations. When the Vorthak arrive, Earth will appear exactly as they expect: divided, frightened, and unprepared, right up until we spring the trap." The next weeks passed in tense preparation. On the surface, Earth continued as normal. News programs discussed climate change and economic policies. Sports events drew millions of viewers. Children went to school. The 7 billion humans living their daily lives had no idea that above their heads, the greatest military deception in galactic history was about to unfold. In deep space, Commander Zektar remained on station, observing Earth and transmitting regular reports. He noticed increased activity around some of Earth's obvious military installations, exactly what would be expected from a species preparing a desperate defense. He didn't notice the signals hidden in cosmic background radiation, coordinating hundreds of hidden facilities. He didn't detect the ships powering up in caverns beneath Luna's surface, or the weapons platforms disguised as derelict satellites. Dr. Harrison had profiled the Vorthak psychology perfectly. They were apex predators who had forgotten that even predators could become prey. Their empire was built on a simple principle: appear so powerful that fighting became unthinkable. But humans had thought about it. They had done nothing but think about it for 80 years. The breakthrough had come when humanity realized that the Vorthak's greatest strength was also their greatest weakness. They were masters of fear, because they themselves had forgotten what it meant to be afraid. They had no contingency plans for a species that couldn't be intimidated, because they had never needed them. Sarah Martinez stood in her command center as the countdown timer showed 3 days until the Vorthak fleet's arrival. Around her, hundreds of personnel managed the most complex military operation in human history. Every asset had to remain hidden until the perfect moment. Every response had to appear desperate and disorganized, while actually being precisely coordinated. "General," Colonel Chen reported, "long-range sensors detect the Vorthak Third Fleet dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system." "They're right on schedule." Sarah nodded and activated the Global Defense Network. "All commands, this is Control. Execute Omega Protocol. Let them come. Let them think they've won. And then remind them that humanity didn't become the dominant species on Earth by being prey. Across the solar system, 10,000 hidden weapons powered up their targeting systems. 12 Prometheus-class warships prepared to jump directly into the middle of the Vorthak fleet. And on Earth, 7 billion humans were about to discover that their species had been preparing for war among the stars. The Vorthak Third Fleet moved in perfect formation toward Earth, confident in their overwhelming superiority. They had no idea they were flying into a trap that had been 8 decades in the making, crafted by a species that had turned paranoia into an art form and deception into a science. The stand at Neptune Admiral Threnvar of the Vorthak Third Fleet stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Destiny's Shadow, as his armada approached the outer planets of Earth's system. 240 vessels moved in perfect synchronization, their black hulls reflecting no light, appearing as holes in space itself. This was the force that had subjugated entire star clusters, that had never known defeat. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "we are approaching the 8th planet of the system. The humans call it Neptune. No defensive installations detected." Threnvar made a sound of satisfaction. The humans were concentrating their pathetic defenses around their homeworld, just as predicted. They would sweep through the outer system unopposed, demonstrating the futility of resistance before demanding Earth's surrender. What the Admiral didn't know was that Neptune had been chosen as the killing field 8 years ago. Its massive magnetic field and radiation belts provided perfect cover for humanity's hidden weapons platforms. In the ice mines of Triton, Neptune's largest moon, 3,000 human personnel waited at their stations, fingers poised over weapons controls. General Martinez watched from Earth as the Vorthak fleet moved deeper into the trap. Distance to Neptune, 15 million kilometers and closing, Colonel Chen reported. They're following standard Vorthak invasion protocol, sweeping for threats but only checking for conventional installations. Sarah activated her direct link to Admiral Thompson aboard the Retribution. "Rebecca, are your ships in position?" "Affirmative, General. All 12 Prometheus vessels are holding position on the far side of Neptune. Jump drives are charged and ready. We can be in the middle of their formation in 3 seconds. The plan was elegantly simple in concept, but required split-second timing in execution. The Vorthak fleet would be allowed to pass Neptune, believing they had cleared the outer system. Then, humanity would reveal its true capabilities in a demonstration that would shatter Vorthak assumptions about Earth's technology level. On the Destiny's Shadow, Admiral Threnvar reviewed the tactical data. "The humans have sent several primitive vessels to intercept us. Chemical rockets and nuclear weapons. How quaint." He turned to his communications officer, broadcast the standard surrender demand. The message that went out to Earth was the same one the Vorthak had used on 1,000 worlds. "People of Earth, you have witnessed the might of the Vorthak Empire. Surrender now and be granted the privilege of serving the Empire. Resist and face complete annihilation. You have 1 rotation of your planet to respond." General Martinez smiled coldly as she heard the ultimatum. "They're exactly where we want them. All Neptune stations prepare for Alpha Strike. Prometheus Fleet, stand by for jump on my mark." Then she activated the global communication system, and for the first time in history, every screen on Earth displayed the same message. "Citizens of Earth, this is General Martinez of Global Defense Command. Our world faces its greatest challenge, but we are ready. Stand by for demonstration of humanity's resolve." Across Earth, 7 billion people stopped what they were doing and watched their screens in shock. The revelation that aliens existed and were threatening Earth should have caused global panic. Instead, something else happened. In every city on every continent, people began gathering in public squares, not in fear but in defiance. Humanity's response to existential threats had always been to unite against them. Admiral Threnvar watched the Earth's response with amusement. They're broadcasting messages of defiance. How touching. They still don't understand the scale of their disadvantage. His amusement lasted exactly 3 more seconds. "Admiral," his tactical officer screamed, "massive energy signatures from Neptune. Weapons platforms are emerging from the ice moon. Thousands of them." The trap sprang with devastating precision. Hidden installations on Triton, Nereid, and within Neptune's rings revealed themselves simultaneously. Particle beam weapons that humanity had developed from theoretical physics papers lashed out across space. Magnetic railguns hurled projectiles at 20% the speed of light. Nuclear-pumped lasers, each one powerful enough to crack a small moon, focused on the Vorthak ships. But the real surprise came from behind. The 12 Prometheus warships jumped directly into the center of the Vorthak formation, their experimental shields blazing as they opened fire with weapons the aliens had never seen before. Gravity distortion cannons that crumpled Vorthak hulls like paper. Anti-matter torpedoes that annihilated matter at the subatomic level. Directed singularity weapons that created microscopic black holes inside enemy ships. Admiral Threnvar watched in horror as his perfectly organized fleet descended into chaos. Impossible! They're using technology that doesn't exist. No species develops such weapons in isolation. The answer came from General Martinez herself, broadcast on all Vorthak command frequencies. Admiral Threnvar, you're right. We didn't develop these weapons in isolation. We developed them by studying you. Every transmission you sent over the past century taught us something. Every scientific principle you discussed, we researched. Every weapon you bragged about, we found a counter for. You gave us the blueprint for our own advancement, and we improved upon it. The battle that followed would be studied by military historians for millennia. The Vorthak had every advantage in numbers and experience. But humanity had spent 80 years preparing for this specific moment, wargaming every possible scenario, developing weapons specifically designed to exploit Vorthak weaknesses. Captain Marcus Rodriguez commanded the lead Prometheus ship, Indomitable. His vessel danced through the Vorthak formation, its human-designed AI making tactical decisions faster than any biological mind could process. Target their command ships! Disrupt their coordination! The Vorthak fought with the skill of a military force that had conquered 1,000 worlds. But they were fighting by a playbook that humanity had been reading for decades. Every formation they adopted had been studied. Every tactic they employed had been counted in simulations. They were master chess players, discovering their opponent had been watching their games for a lifetime. Admiral Thompson's retribution engaged the Destiny's shadow directly. The two massive warships exchanged fire that lit up space for millions of kilometers. But while the Vorthak ship fought with traditional energy weapons and plasma cannons, the human vessel deployed weapons that defied conventional understanding. Deploy the quantum entanglement. Torpedoes, Admiral Thompson ordered, the weapons that struck the Destiny's. Shadow didn't explode in any conventional sense. Instead, they created zones where the fundamental forces of physics temporarily ceased to function properly. Sections of the Vorthak flagship simply ceased to exist, their atoms losing cohesion at the quantum level. Admiral Threnvar realized with growing desperation that this wasn't just a battle. It was a demonstration. The humans weren't just defending themselves. They were sending a message to the entire galaxy. Earth was not prey. Earth was the predator that had been pretending to sleep. Admiral, his science officer reported in terror, I'm detecting gravitational anomalies throughout the system. They're creating artificial singularities. They're weaponizing space-time itself. The Neptune Defense Grid, as humanity would later call it, represented technologies that shouldn't have been possible for a species that had only achieved spaceflight a century ago. But humans had always been exceptional at one thing: warfare. They had taken theoretical physics and turned it into weapons. They had taken intercepted alien science and improved upon it. They had taken their own bloody history and distilled it into pure strategic brilliance. On Earth, the population watched in awe as humanity's hidden strength was revealed. The fear that might have crippled them instead transformed into something else: pride. Their species hadn't cowered before the alien threat. They had prepared. They had planned. They had turned their entire civilization into a weapon aimed at the stars. The battle raged for 6 hours. When it ended, the Vorthak Third Fleet had been reduced by 60%. The surviving ships, including the heavily damaged Destiny's Shadow, retreated beyond Neptune's orbit, their formations shattered and their confidence destroyed. Admiral Threnvar, wounded and watching his bridge burn around him, sent a message that would echo throughout the Vorthak Empire. Earth is not what we believed. They are not primitive. They are not divided. They are not prey. Request immediate reinforcement or authorization to withdraw. General Martinez received the message, with grim satisfaction. Admiral Thompson, maintain pressure but don't pursue beyond Neptune. Let them run. Let them tell the galaxy what happened here. The stand at Neptune, as historians would call it, lasted less than a day. But it changed everything. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Vorthak Empire had been defeated in direct combat. More importantly, they had been defeated by a species they had dismissed as primitive. In the aftermath of the battle, as human ships rescued survivors from destroyed vessels, both human and Vorthak, something unprecedented happened. Commander Zektar, still observing from his scout ship, sent a private message to Earth Command. General Martinez, I request permission to open diplomatic channels between Earth and progressive elements within the Vorthak Empire. Not all of us believe in conquest. Some of us have been waiting for a species strong enough to stand against the Empire's expansion. Sarah Martinez stood in her command center, surrounded by her staff, as Earth celebrated its first victory in interstellar combat. But she knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy now knew that humanity existed and that it could fight. The question was, what would humanity do with this newfound power? Open the channel to Commander Zektar, she ordered. It's time to show the galaxy that humans can be as skilled at making peace as we are at making war. But on our terms as equals, never as subjects. A new order among stars 3 months had passed since the stand at Neptune. The damaged Vorthak Third Fleet had retreated to the edge of the solar system, maintaining position but making no aggressive moves. On Vorthana Prime, the Vorthak Empire faced its first existential crisis in 3 millennia. The impossible had happened. They had been defeated by a supposedly primitive species. Supreme Overseer Kralvek stood before the Imperial Council, his 6 eyes showing the strain of recent events. The humans have demonstrated capabilities we believed impossible for their development level. Our entire doctrine of expansion through intimidation has been challenged. We must reconsider our approach. Meanwhile, Earth had become the center of galactic attention. News of humanity's victory had spread through quantum communication networks to every corner of known space. Species that had lived under Vorthak dominance for centuries suddenly saw hope. The giant could bleed. General Martinez, now promoted to Supreme Commander of Earth Defense Forces, sat in the newly constructed Global Unity Hall in Geneva. Representatives from every Earth nation had gathered for a historic session. The secret was out. Humanity had been preparing for alien contact for nearly a century, and now they had to decide what to do with their newfound position in galactic politics. President Jiang Ming addressed the assembly. We stand at a crossroads. We can use our military advantage to become conquerors ourselves, or we can offer the galaxy something different, a new model based on mutual respect and genuine cooperation. Before anyone could respond, alarms began sounding. Colonel Chen rushed into the hall. Commander, we have multiple contacts jumping into the system, but they're not Vorthak. They're everyone else. The tactical display showed dozens of ships from various species arriving at the edge of the solar system. The Kethari Federation, the Zelvan Collective, the Etherian Republic, civilizations that had been under Vorthak influence for generations, were coming to Earth. The first transmission came from Ambassador Velix of the Kethari, a crystalline being whose species communicated through harmonic frequencies. People of Earth, we come seeking alliance. Your victory against the Vorthak has shown us that resistance is possible. We wish to learn from you, to stand with you, to create a new order among the stars. Sarah activated the global communication system. Ambassador Velix, Earth welcomes peaceful dialogue. However, we must be clear. We will not replace one empire with another. Any alliance must be between equals. Over the following weeks, Earth became the site of the largest diplomatic gathering in galactic history. Representatives from 17 different species arrived, each bringing their own hopes and fears. The Vorthak Empire watched from afar, uncertain how to respond to this unprecedented coalition forming around a species they had dismissed as primitive. Dr. Harrison, now Earth's chief xenopsychologist, worked tirelessly to understand the various alien cultures. Each species that's approaching us has been traumatized by centuries of Vorthak dominance, he explained to the Earth Council. They're looking to us not just for military protection, but for a new paradigm of interstellar relations. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Commander Zektar, the Vorthak scout who had first discovered Earth's deception, requested a private meeting with General Martinez. They met on the neutral ground of Lunar Base with only translators present. "General," Zektar began, his forearms spread in what his species considered a gesture of openness, "I represent a faction within the Vorthak Empire that has long questioned our methods. Your victory has given us the opportunity to voice what we've believed for generations. The age of empire through fear must end." Sarah studied the alien commander carefully. "And what do you propose?" "A radical restructuring of galactic civilization. Not the Vorthak Empire imposing order through strength, nor Earth doing the same, but a true confederation of equal species, the Solaccords we might call them, with Earth as the neutral mediator. The negotiation that followed would be remembered as the most important diplomatic event in galactic history. Over 6 weeks, representatives from Earth, progressive Vorthak factions, and 17 other species hammered out the framework for a new interstellar government. The Solaccords established principles that were revolutionary by galactic standards but familiar to humans. Sovereignty of individual species, mutual defense agreements, shared scientific advancement, and most importantly, no single species would hold dominance over others. Decisions would be made by consensus, with each species having equal voice regardless of their technological level or military strength. Admiral Thompson, now commanding Earth's expanding fleet, provided the military framework. Each member species contributes to a combined defense force, but maintains their own sovereignty. Earth's Neptune defense grid becomes the template, not for conquest, but for ensuring no species can dominate others through force. The response from the traditional Vorthak leadership was swift and predictable. Supreme Overseer Kralvek broadcast to the entire galaxy, "Earth's naive idealism will lead to chaos. Without strong leadership, without the order we have provided for millennia, civilization will collapse into warfare." But something unprecedented happened. On Vorthana Prime itself, citizens began demonstrating in support of the Solaccords. The Vorthak Empire's own population, tired of endless expansion and the resources it consumed, saw Earth's model as a better path forward. The tipping point came when the Etherian Republic, one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, formally signed the Solaccords. Their representative, a being of pure energy named Luminous Thought, addressed the gathering. "For eons we have possessed technology that could have challenged the Vorthak Empire. We chose not to use it, fearing the chaos that would follow. Earth has shown us another way, strength without domination, power without oppression. Within 6 months, 43 species had signed the Solaccords. Earth, which had hidden from the galaxy for so long, found itself at the center of a new confederation that spanned thousands of light years. The Neptune defense grid technology was shared with all members, creating a network of mutual protection that made any single species dominance impossible. General Martinez stood before the first session of the Sol Confederation Council, held in a specially constructed station at the edge of Earth's system. "We gather not as conquerors or conquered, not as superior or inferior, but as equals seeking a better future. Earth's contribution to this confederation isn't our weapons or our technology, it's our history. We've made every mistake a species can make. We've had wars that nearly destroyed us. We've faced extinction and survived. We offer the hard-won wisdom that strength comes not from dominating others, but from standing together. The Vorthak Empire, faced with the defection of half their member species and growing unrest at home, finally came to the negotiating table. Supreme Overseer Kralvek himself traveled to Earth. The first time a Vorthak leader had ever visited a lesser species homeworld as anything other than a conqueror. The meeting took place in Earth's Global Unity Hall, with representatives from every Sol Confederation member present. Kralvek's opening words surprised everyone. The Vorthak Empire formally requests membership in the Sol Confederation. The negotiation was complex. The Vorthak had committed acts that many species considered unforgivable. But Earth's leadership, particularly General Martinez, argued for a path of reconciliation rather than revenge. "We can spend the next 1,000 years fighting," Sarah addressed the assembly. "Or we can choose to build something better." The Vorthak Empire's knowledge and resources, combined with the Sol Confederation's principles of equality, could create a golden age for all our species. The terms were strict. The Vorthak Empire would dissolve, with its former territories becoming independent members of the Sol Confederation. Vorthak military technology would be shared with all members. Most importantly, they would submit to the same rules as everyone else. No special status, no elevated position, true equality. It took Kralvek 3 days to accept. His final statement would be remembered as a turning point in galactic history. For 3,000 years, the Vorthak believed that strength meant standing above others. Earth has taught us that true strength means standing beside them. 1 year after first contact, Earth hosted the largest celebration in galactic history. Ships from 93 species gathered in the solar system, not as conquerors or refugees, but as equals. The Jupiter shipyards, once humanity's secret weapons factories, were converted into centers of shared technological development. The Mars colonies became universities, where species exchanged knowledge freely. Dr. Harrison published his analysis of humanity's unique contribution to galactic civilization. Humans succeeded where others failed, not because we were stronger or smarter, but because we understood deception and cooperation in equal measure. We knew when to hide our strength and when to reveal it. We knew when to fight and when to forgive. Our bipolar nature, capable of both terrible violence and remarkable compassion, made us the perfect mediators for a galaxy tired of extremes. Admiral Thompson, now commanding the Sol Confederation Combined Fleet, established training academies where military officers from all species learned not just tactics, but the principles of protection rather than conquest. The Neptune defense grid was replicated in 17 systems, creating zones of safety where no aggression was possible. The transformation wasn't without challenges. Some Vorthak hardliners attempted a coup, trying to restore the old empire. Some human extremists wanted to use Earth's position to create their own empire. But the Sol Confederation's structure, with its checks and balances learned from humanity's own difficult history, prevented any single faction from gaining too much power. 5 years after the stand at Neptune, General Sarah Martinez retired from military service to become Earth's first ambassador to the Sol Confederation. In her farewell address, she reflected on humanity's journey. We spent 80 years preparing for war, only to discover that our greatest victory would come from waging peace. We hid our strength not from cowardice but from wisdom, understanding that the right moment to reveal power is when you can use it to protect rather than conquer. Earth didn't become the center of a new galactic order because we were the strongest, but because we remembered what it was like to be weak. We offered the galaxy something it had never seen before, a powerful species that chose not to dominate. The galaxy had indeed been transformed. Where once the Vorthak Empire's black ships had inspired fear, now the silver vessels of the Sol Confederation brought hope. Scientific advancement accelerated as species shared knowledge freely. Art and culture flourished as civilizations no longer feared contamination or conquest. Commander Zektar, now serving as the Vorthak representative to the Sol Confederation, often met with Sarah Martinez to discuss the extraordinary transformation they had witnessed. "Your species did something we thought impossible," he told her during one such meeting. "You turned first contact from a moment of conquest into a moment of liberation, for everyone, including us." Sarah smiled, looking out at the stars that no longer seemed threatening. "We didn't do it alone. It took the courage of species like yours to admit change was needed. Earth just provided the catalyst and the framework. The real victory belongs to everyone who chose cooperation over domination." The story of humanity's emergence onto the galactic stage would be told for millennia. Not as conquerors who replaced one empire with another, but as the species that ended the age of empires altogether. Earth had shown the galaxy that strength didn't require oppression, that security didn't require dominance, and that the greatest power of all was the ability to turn enemies into allies. In the end, humanity's greatest contribution to galactic civilization wasn't their weapons or their technology. It was the simple revolutionary idea that had taken humans themselves thousands of years to learn, that diversity was strength, that cooperation was more powerful than conquest, and that true security came not from standing above others, but from standing together. The stars, once silent and threatening, now hummed with the communications of 100 species working together. Earth, The small blue planet that had hidden its strength for so long had become the heart of a new order among the stars. And in that new order, for the first time in galactic history, every voice mattered equally.